Hi, I'm Stu Kagan, and welcome to Born Scrappy, the podcast for scrap metal exporters and traders. Join me in conversation with some of the most experienced traders and operators that have helped shape this incredible industry. In today's episode, I chat with Sebastien Perron. Sebastian is the Vice President of Recycling Procurement at Wieland and has been involved in trading at Sims, Alpert and Alpert, and American Iron and Metals. In the episode, we discuss working at the biggest companies in the industry, how persistence can get you what you want, why following your gut can create the best opportunities, the difficulties of post acquisition integration, and so much more. So let's hear from Sebastian. But first, intro. Hey, Sebastian, how are you?
Good. How are you, mate?
Yeah,
I
awesome,
could,
man. So glad to have you on.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, we spoke
Glad we
about
can make
it.
it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Eventually, we've spoken about it for a few months now. So, with your hectic schedule, and I'm glad we can make it happen.
Yeah,
So,
same.
thanks for joining us.
Of course. Wouldn't want to miss it.
Yeah, exactly right. Seb, so for those that don't know you, and I think there are a lot of listeners that do know you, but for those that don't, give us a little bit of background of your journey so far in the recycling space. So some of the companies you've worked for, and what Wieland, the company you're with at the moment, what they do in the space.
So I was born in 1980, and no, I'm not going to go
That
that
was the
far
same year as
back.
me, funny enough. So
Same year.
great
Oh, there you
start.
go. But now I just gave away my age, so that's it.
Yeah, you
Um,
ruined.
it was a funny thing stumbling across this industry. I mean, I was 21 or 22 when I met someone in Montreal who was in this industry, and it was a pure stumble on. And before you know it, I start working in the yard as a metal sorter, and made my way through that company to management in 12 years. So at American Iron Metal, which was a pretty interesting journey, and I really appreciate the opportunity they gave me for sure to learn this industry. After that, I think our family was ready for a new adventure, and we moved to Hong Kong, joining Sims, which was a great experience. Having had worked in Asia for years before, just being part of it and being there was a great experience, and also just to teach the kids what the rest of the world looks like. And that it doesn't all look like Montreal, and I think they appreciate that today, and it made them, better people. Coming back to the United States from there for Sims for a while, and then had an opportunity at Alpert and Alpert to direct that company, which was also a great experience. And here I am today. Let's say I'll skip one and go straight to Wieland. I mean, Wieland is just an amazing company, the largest I've ever worked for. 9,000 employees. The interesting thing is Wieland specializes in manufacturing, which I've never been part of. I've always been part of recycling companies. So to see the other side, the foundry side and the production side is quite interesting. I mean, we have over 80 locations across the globe. Here in North America, I head the procurement team for the foundries and also the buy and sell that we do out of our recycling facility in St. Louis. So it's a pretty broad interaction here in the US, but Wieland as a whole is just really impressive.
It's quite funny because people hear you work for Sims for a period, and then you go on to say, and Wieland is the biggest company you've worked for. But most people in our industry see Sims as the giant, right? And then you talk about Wieland.
Yeah, I know. It was like that when I went to Sims. I was like, yeah, I'm going to work for the largest recycling company in the world. And it sounded really cool. And it was. I mean, I learned a lot about the corporate world, which is something I was hoping to get out of it. And unfortunately, it just, didn't work out. But yeah, Wieland is, again, it's probably 1.5 times the size. So it's again, another world.
Mm. I used to hear your name a lot. I worked at Sims just for 1 year when I arrived in New Zealand, and I used to hear your name a lot. And you were, just to fill in everybody else, you were on the global trade side, so you were handling all the trade for their global footprint, right?
Yeah, I was supporting Graham, I think, in the global trade role at Sims. You know, at American, I had come up in basically dealing with overseas customers and domestic aluminum, as you would say, but aluminum as for your Western listeners. And going to Hong Kong was a transition before coming back to the US. So the purpose in the US was to lead the non-ferrous division for the US operations. But while I was in Hong Kong, I was definitely working international trade, moving material from New Zealand, Australia to Europe, to the US, vice versa. Some things that just weren't being done in the past, so that was a good challenge.
Were you specifically trading your own group's metal, or were you also handling other companies outside of Sims?
Yeah, at that stage, brokerage trading was in its infancy. I think on the non-ferrous side. On the ferrous side, it was quite mature at Sims. But most of the sales that we were doing were just trying to position the yard material. I would say out of the 45,000 metric ton ish per month of non-ferrous that was getting moved around, there's probably only one of trading.
Hmm. Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Um, Seb, you've got incredible experience, and I like because there's a wide range of different employers that you've worked for and different teams that you've been a part of. You've also spent a lot of time in the yard, so um, going through your journey is going to be really helpful, and trying to get some stories from you should be great learnings for a lot of us. So, talk me through a tough trade that you've had to deal with in the past. Something that was really, a bit of a stumper that you had to deal with and get through.
I mean, what comes to mind is 2008. Um, I mean, I was 4 years in, really only 1 year of market exposure, and here I am. Actually, I was traveling from a BIR to Japan for the first time. Very exciting. And the whole Lehman Brothers thing started falling down, and I didn't know what was going on. From 2004 to 2008, the recycling industry looked so great. Everything just, prices were just going higher, and metal was flowing. And suddenly, we had a few hundred containers with no one that wanted it. No matter how much deposit they paid, the market tanked so badly. Uh, in different markets, this was happening. So it was a real challenge to prioritize the issues and to figure out how we're going to deal with it, because no one had to do this before. And you couldn't get a hold of people. Some people disappeared. You had to go to Asia, try to set things right with steamship lines. Certain countries, when containers arrive and no one claims them, it's not, you can't even export them, even though you're the shipper. In some cases, customs were cleared, but they didn't pick them up, and yeah. So I would say, there's been a lot of little funny stuff along the way, but that was definitely the worst.
So, were you at AIM at the time?
Yes.
And what sort of role did you have in the company in 2008? Were you head of sales or working as a trader there?
Yeah, no, I was heading the aluminum sales after,
Wow.
3.5 years working in the plant, sorting in the departments, shipping, receiving. I drove a forklift for quite a while, so I was stuffing containers, I think, as you say, out in ANZ.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of that, which was great. I mean, I wouldn't give a day back.
Mm.
So I had a year in me of trading in Asia, India, Europe, and the US. So it was still pretty green. So it was quite a, quite a
Yeah,
big
and the
challenge.
reason why I ask is I was part of a greater trading team with a head of trading above me when that all happened. I had spent it's 2008, so I spent about nearly 10 years in the yards and progressing through different roles in the yards before that. And I think it was 2007 when I joined my trading team. This is
Hmm.
back in South Africa. But we had about 6 or 7
Right.
traders on the team, and we had head of trading. So I'd only been on the trading side. Granted, I'd seen the prices moving up. I'd been a rep on the road buying. I'd been a branch manager or general manager of different regions. But so I'd seen the markets always climbing. We always made a lot of money because whatever I bought today, I sold tomorrow and made money, right? Up until
Yes.
2008.
It's hard to
And I
screw it up,
joined it. Yeah,
if I can
exactly.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're quite right. And 2007, joined the trading team. And 2008, all hell broke loose. And I just remember, the guys I reported to having to get on a plane and fly to China, right? And try and negotiate contracts with everybody. And we had thousands and thousands of tons of copper and brass on the water at the time, worth, as you can imagine, massive, massive values.
Yes.
And that was really hectic. So that's why I was wondering what position you were in. So you were head of aluminum. So you were having to make those decisions for the company, right? And difficult because you don't necessarily have anybody else to make that decision for you.
I was working closely with one of the owners. Zorba was our biggest headache, but ultimately, he would say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and I have to execute. And some of it was difficult, some of it was a little bit easier.
And would you say you came out okay at the end? I mean, they're obviously still a thriving business, so you wouldn't have done too bad. But did you take losses on a few things?
Yes, we definitely, let's say, multiple millions. In the end, you had to find a buyer for the material, or else things would just sit in a container lot in a foreign country and just accumulate detention and demurrage. And even if the steamship line was going to give you a 50% discount, which was probably the best we could get at the time, you had to make a decision and you had to find a buyer and take that hit. So, it really educated me on, no matter how big your deposit or how well you think a consumer, when things go really bad, there's not a whole lot you can do in some cases.
Yeah, no, I hear you. We also went back a few million, so it was tough times for sure. And Seb, talk me through some tough decisions you had to make, either personally or for a company, and the lessons you might have learned through that.
Well, I always say the toughest decision I've ever had to make was to leave American Art of Metal, actually, after 12 years. I felt that company really gave me a shot in life and in business, and taught me a lot of valuable things. And very, very difficult decision to break out of that. But I think it was important for me to think about who I want to be when I grow up. Something that we don't take the time to do when we're caught in the middle of a million different things. And money aside, it's what's the challenge, what's the opportunity, what's the environment that you want to be part of. And maybe I didn't know for sure, but I knew I was willing to take a chance and do something different. So yeah, what I learned was that you know, I did the right thing. I still have a lot of respect for that company and most of the people that are there. But it was the right decision for my family and I. So sometimes you just have to follow your gut and take a risk.
Yeah, and that's great to hear, because obviously you have a lot of respect for the company as well. Often people will leave, and that's wasn't even a tough decision at the time. So you obviously enjoyed what you were doing. Something that makes me think of is somebody once told me that the way to plan for your future is to decide what you want at a certain time. I mean, this can be like any goals or any sort of strategy planning. So it might be 10 years. So you decide, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to have learned. This is the education I want, whatever it might be. And this is the position that I want. And then work backwards, all the way back to where you are today. And if you then see that your trajectory doesn't match where you're meant to be tomorrow, you have to make the change today. You can't expect to make it in 5 years' time if you're wanting to be somewhere in 10 years. So if you knew that you wanted to have that growth, you wanted to have that sort of education, maybe you wanted your kids to experience, to in 10 years' time be more worldly and know that, then you work your way back and you go, well, I have to make a change now. And that change might be joining the CME or SIMS in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. It's true. I wish my life was that organized, but where I could foresee that. And I think this industry has a way of throwing curveballs at us. As I think you and I discussed offline different things, and in our lives, and you have to remain nimble, open-minded. I think you have to be
100%.
willing to pivot.
Yeah, and resilient. Like
Yeah,
you
for
have to
sure.
be ready when something's thrown at you. I think resilience is interesting though, because you only kind of find out you have it when you're in deep, deep water. it's not something you can go, yeah, I'm resilient, but I've, had a silver spoon in my mouth and I've never had any sort of problems. When you get thrown in the deep end, you find out. And the more you get thrown in the deep
Absolutely.
end, I guess, the better that muscle is worked and the stronger you get.
I mean, just as a general thing in life, I feel that from what I've seen, the people that go through the most adversity come out the strongest and are most driven. It's fascinating.
Mm.
Um,
Then that brings us into childhood, mate, and parenting. And should we
oh
be
boy,
so good? Should we be? Should
we'll
we be
stay
giving
away
out?
from that one.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This could be a whole nother episode. I'll have to have you on
Yeah,
season 2 when we talk about parenting in
yeah,
the metal recycling industry.
yeah.
All right, talk to me
I'll
about.
skip that one.
Yeah, no, you'll be on, mate. Talk to me about collaboration. How over the years you've collaborated, or you've seen the companies that you've been with collaborate, working with other associations, other people, other companies in the industry. I think that we're a hyper local industry, and we don't necessarily collaborate enough.
Well, I would say those that I've seen that succeed the most have a collaborative spirit.
Mm.
Whether you're starting in a company, whether you're higher up in the echelon, you have to treat everyone with the utmost respect, right? You have to consider everyone's situation and be sensitive to it. So I think one of my best, you know, exposures to that during American Iron and Metal days, we went through a rampant acquisition spree, and we're making partnerships or full acquisitions, and because of, I guess, the situation I was in at the time, they would send me to these JVs to, hey, I'm going to tell you how you're going to do things now because you're now part of the big company, and it's difficult because owner operators who've done well for themselves, who've most of the times have worked really hard their whole life, and you're young and you're trying to bridge the two companies, and you have to earn their trust. They have to sense that you're working hard, that you're in their best interest, as well as well, both companies really. And I think that was a really big challenge in collaboration and in trying to get that buy-in. And I feel like I did quite well, unfortunately, so well that they kept sending me to these joint venture areas, and I would tell my wife, all right, I'll see you in 2 months, I got to go here. And but that's it. It's a good example of it for me.
The It's a great example because post acquisition integration is one of the hardest things corporates deal with. Often, if you're doing it for the first time, it can be overlooked, and you think, oh well, we'll just do a joint venture, or we'll buy a company, and then we'll just integrate, and it'll use our processes and systems, and everything will be fine. But you don't take into consideration exactly that, right? You've got an owner operator that's been doing it for, who knows, 30, 40 years, and they've got a set way of doing it. All the people that they've trained, and they're all um, staunch followers of the owner operator usually as well, and you're having to come in there and try and convince everyone that you have their, you know, you have them in mind and want to make sure that this is the best for everybody. But they all obviously see you as just a henchman coming from the big boss, and yeah, that's very tough. And it's a great form of collaboration because I think you would have learnt about collaboration so much during that. The experience that you gained during that period
Yes.
is massively valuable.
And everybody's so different, and how do you connect with each one, and what's that thing that gets them to connect with you? A lot of times it's, well, if you package it this way, you'll make more money. That seems to resonate a lot. Uh,
Yeah. And
with
this way it might be more efficient. You get to go home at 5 p.m. and go see your family instead
yeah.
of working until 7. We've got these processes in place that free you up to go and spend time doing the things you want to do. Right. So but you got to work out what drives each person.
That's
Um,
it.
and that's where your experience that you learned during that time is massively valuable because it will help you in so many other roles you play. It's about often bringing people on the journey, making sure that they're a part of the decision making so that they feel a part of it, so that they can drive the company in the right direction. There's so many of those aspects to that post acquisition integration that are important, but that you can use in other parts of your role in the company.
Agree. I would only add to
Mm.
that, push yourself in a discomfort zone, and then like you said, you figure your way out, and it just makes you a better person. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I know it's pretty sketchy, but it's true.
Well, so I guess when we come to the quote at the end, your
Oh,
quote will
that's not
be,
the one.
"What doesn't kill you makes you stronger."
No, I'll find a different one.
Find another one. Good work. So tell me, Zeb, you've been doing this now. It's got to be almost
20
25
years.
years,
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
years, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the career highlight that you've had? And what do you think got you there? It's not over yet. You've got a lot longer to go in your
Yeah.
career. You're my age, so we've got long to go. But so far, if you were to look back and go, that's a highlight. I really enjoyed that. And this is what got me there.
Well, oh, this might not be a good one for you, but I think the highlight was joining the industry. I
It's
mean,
great.
honestly, I had no idea it existed. Here I was living my life parallel and not doing a whole lot with it at the time. And, stumbled across, one of the owners of the company. And, what I think is valuable, and I think it's kind of cool to talk about it a little bit, is after I noticed that this person had some level of success. I was like, wow, that's, what industry is that? And then they're like, well, it's the recycling industry. I'm like, well, I have no idea what that means, but okay, and so I actually called the owner back 6 months later and I said, hey, I still don't really understand what you do and your website kind of sucks. I didn't say that, but at the time it really did. I mean, this was, early 2000s, and no, if you weren't in tech, it wasn't great.
Lucky
So,
they even had a website.
yeah, lucky they had one.
Yeah.
So I said, but I'd really like to work for you. I said, you're successful. I'd like to be successful. I'm willing to put in the effort. I'm willing to start from scratch, just learn. And, I don't know what got into me, but I made that call, and it took a little bit of time, maybe another year and a half of persistence to eventually, get on the shop floor. And I think that the highlight, because that's what allowed me to experience everything I have with my family, and travel the world, and meet so many great people, and have a lot of good dinners. Maybe the
I
dinners
love
is
it.
actually the highlight. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you have a secret highlight in all that, which was actually the dinners.
Yeah.
So you glad you joined the industry, and we'll do the highlights on LinkedIn. So you glad you joined the industry because you got to eat good dinners.
Yes.
We're just going to use that
Ma-
little snippet.
yeah. Maybe we'll cut that one out. I don't know.
So when we're promoting for the new generation to join our industry, I had a whole long thing I was going to say when you were talking there about, this is so good for the next generation, but I think we're just going to use join our industry and get good dinner.
Travel the world and discover great food.
Sounds great. Sounds
It
great.
could be a
Yeah,
slogan.
but seriously though, I mean that's a great highlight, and we're constantly looking at, we're now in our 40s, and we're constantly looking at who the next generation is of recyclers and how do we bring them into our industry? How do we attract them to our industry?
It's
And we're a
tough.
hidden industry, man. Like
We are.
like you say, you knew nothing, and then you met somebody who's done well, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I don't even know what you do. And then even nowadays, you go look at websites and they're not even up to scratch, right? It's like, get us a good website, put yourself out there, get on social media, tell people what you do, and attract the next generation of recyclers. We do so much good stuff, not just financially, right? So there's a lot of benefit to being it financially,
Yeah.
but also, the fact that you've got the next generation coming through that wants to also do good, like we're the perfect place for them to land, but we need to make ourselves known. So that thing that your highlight is vital for the next generation, and to share that throughout.
Well, and something I would say to a manager is, always be on alert. Whether you're going to the grocery store, to Best Buy, a hotel, you, you try to pick people when you can, and sometimes people are willing to take a leap and try something different, and do the right thing for the environment. And I mean, that's the old way. The new way, Wieland is very structured in that sense. I feel like they're connecting with communities and high school and colleges and universities, and trying to expose, young engineers and trade workers to, why it would be a good thing to join, a sustainable type company that's really making a difference, and it's important in the value stream. You can't build anything without, well, copper, steel, and aluminum. I don't want to offend anyone in a different industry, but
Mm. But no,
at least
you
those three
100%.
maybe. Yeah.
No, you're quite right. And I think yes, the more corporates are definitely looking through the universities, and they have different programs to bring through people through the company. But then you've got the owner operators who can go for a cup of coffee every day and go, well, this barista is always here on time, really polite, remembers all my orders. That person's going to be brilliant on my
At
front
something.
scale at
Yeah.
something,
That's
right? And then bring them through, and they're young and they're driven, they're motivated. And if you can identify that, for me and my experiences, those people are the ones that really, really step up to the plate. And I really enjoy bringing them through. Also, just you kind of get back as well when you give back, and you kind of bring these people through, and then the next thing they become, your senior management team or director of your company, and you remember when they were just pouring you coffees, right? And you give them the opportunity, and so many people just need the opportunity. Once they get that opportunity, if they take it with both hands, man, it's a great feeling for both parties.
it is.
Mm.
Creates loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Now, that's why I asked. Well, this is why I asked earlier, when you were in the Sims side, you were mainly trading the Sims material. But what I like to ask people is, if you were to give some tips for exporters to optimize their trading strategy, and these are for the metal recyclers out there that are listening, um, what would you recommend they do to really get the best out of their trading strategy?
2 words: be honest. You know,
Mm.
one of the best pieces of advice I ever had was, you only have one word, one reputation. You can't kill it. You have to baby it. You have to make sure you're doing the right thing, because over time you'll win, and short-term gains aren't worth the long-term ones.
Mm.
One, building relationships. People help you out when you're in trouble. I think it's important to create balance. If you always want an extra penny, they'll quote you less, knowing you want an extra penny. But there's a better way, I think, to do it. Is, hey, I really need 3 cents this time, and next time I can give you one. Or you
Mm-hmm.
try to pull a little bit to your side, but you have to be able to give and take. And I think that the most important thing is how you develop that respect in those relationships over time, because it's a small industry, and just like on the supplier side, on the consumer side, they're all talking to each other. So I think the best advice I would give is, you know, do what you say you're going to do, and just try to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. The be honest, just those two words. If traders in these companies and owner operators stuck that on their wall, it would go a long way, because it comes down, there's so many different aspects in our industry, or times, that if you just stick to that, you won't land up in trouble, right? So think about quality issues. Everybody says they have the best, whatever grade you want to make it, right?
Yeah,
My
you'll love
Elmo
it.
is
Yeah.
perfect. You're going to love it. It's great. Instead of going, my Elmo, it's not exactly what, I've got, some of it's a bit larger. Here's some pictures of it. These aren't pictures I took 3 years ago, which I've kept stored because I use the same pictures every single time because they're of one perfect batch. This is the accurate pictures of what this Elmo is going to look like. You'll see a few issues in it. However, there are some starters and alternators in it as well, which could have immediately the buyer knows what they've got coming, instead of it arriving at their warehouse and immediately their back is up because they were lied to. And that's how you feel straight away when your material arrived and it wasn't what you were told. If you manage expectations for the buyer, immediately their relationship will be stronger.
I agree, and if you make a mistake, own up to it.
Mm.
It happens, and I love the top 10 commandments of scrap. I don't know if you run through them yet on your show,
No.
but it's really funny, and I swear I've heard every one of them. at different times. One of them is they say at the bottom of what barrel, or um, I've never had this issue with anyone else, and
Yeah.
these things like they don't. It, Something people I think need to always be cognizant of is time and energy and the value of it, because
Mm.
sometimes the time you take to try to settle a claim and argue, and unless that's your thing, being really argumentative, it's really not, doesn't help you make your business better.
Oh, it does. In fact, it makes it worse. Like
It
the
does.
amount of time and effort when you receive that email and it's like, oh, there's been an issue. As an owner operator, I can tell you what, like you're doing so much all day, or you're wearing every single hat in the company, and then you've now got to deal with this. And immediately you want to ask the guys in the yard, can they remember? But this is 2 or 3 months ago when they packed it. You rather, and this goes back to be honest, if you know you loaded something that was an issue, rather say so. Give the guys a heads up immediately. And this came out a few times on Born Scrappy, where the buyers have said, tell me that by mistake you loaded whatever it might be in this parcel. So that when it arrives, the guys who open the container don't get livid and angry and, back up straight away that they now want to fight you because you try to get away with something in the parcel. Rather, you let them know that, hey, by mistake, the loader didn't realize that was in the parcel. So he loaded. Heads up, it's on your way. It's on the way.
That'll go a long way.
Absolutely. But I don't think I've ever seen it. Like, I don't think people do that. I mean, somebody mentioned on Born Scrappy early on, one of the first few episodes, but I can't think of anybody actually doing it because even if they do know of it, they immediately think, well, hopefully it won't be picked up.
Yeah, there's
But
a
it's
little
going to be
part of
picked
them
up.
that says, let's see.
Yeah. Let's
Maybe it won't be
see.
as bad as
Yeah.
it should
Yeah.
be.
And it's always going to be worse because their backs up when they received it, right? So it wasn't on
Yeah,
spec, it wasn't meant to be in there. Immediately now, if it's 10%, they're going to make it 20% because now they have to deal with it. And what else have they maybe missed in other parcels from you that they've offloaded? So they'll increase it a little bit. And then you're
absolutely.
having to deal with that headache. Yeah, it's not fun. So optimize your trading strategy. Be honest. I couldn't agree more with that. So now, when dealing with a new buyer, so now we're talking still about the exporters or sellers in general, the metal processors. When they're dealing with a new buyer, in your experience, what should they be considering early on in this relationship?
Uh, spending some managing Alpert and Alpert, this opened a whole new bag of experience for me. They were buying, or I don't know, they might still be, but buying material from, emerging markets in Central South America, in West Africa, North Africa, markets I had never participated in. And it was very, I was like, what's the, know your customer? I was going to say KYC on this one.
Okay,
How
what's
do
it?
how do you figure out if this supplier in, this part of the world is reliable? Because there's not a lot of ways to, you know no, it's not like you can call one of your friends in the industry, say, hey, have you dealt with this company before? They probably don't know them, and they don't want to say who it is because they want to protect the new customer in the new market. And I mean, for me, it's the people. And it's not a perfect science, because again, you kind of have to follow your gut. I think that you have to try to look beyond the transaction and see the person that you're dealing with. And there are certain cultures that you try to engage in business with, and it takes 6 months, a year. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but they're very detailed about the relationship, the performance capabilities. And you know, when you think about it, they do it for a good reason, because once they start business with you, you're in, and unless you really mess it up, you're good for life. So I think you really somehow have to try to know. And if you're gonna venture in foreign markets, you have to jump on the plane. I mean, I say that, but I bought material out of Morocco, for 3 years from a guy that I had never met. And but it just felt right. And then when
Mm.
we met, we just became really good friends, because we just close that loop. So
it's the people, right? It's the people behind the businesses, it's the relationships that are absolutely key.
yes.
I totally agree with that. Trying to get to visit them, a lot of people speak about trying to get to visit if you can, is also really helpful. Know who you're dealing with is really important. Do you, for example, with the guy in Morocco, would you usually start with a really small parcel as a trial, see how they perform on that, or back in the day, did you go all in and let's just get this going?
Yeah, I've heard some all-in stories. I've actually had to clean some up at Alpert in particular. No, I'm a onesie twosie. Let's bump the motors, see how it goes. Then you see how they communicate with documentation, pictures. Do they put the seal number on the bill of lading? There's just a lot of little things that can make or break a good deal, time wise. I mean, the worst thing is chasing a steamship line, to change things or reconsign a container if there are issues. So yeah, I would definitely be, and then,
Onesie twosies.
the quality. But then I've heard other stories. It's like onesie twosie is great, and then they go big, and then it blows up. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think there's a perfect answer to that. But have a, if you have a, people don't want to hurt people they like or they care about generally. Yeah. you know people people want to do the right thing with people that they like. So if you
Yeah.
feel like you can get to a point where your communication and the relationship is at least, to a certain level, I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, agreed. And how do these exporters become preferred suppliers? And I guess does a preferred supplier get preferential prices? There's been a bit of back and forth with this on the show. Do you think you get a better price if you're a preferred supplier? And how do you become one of those?
It's going to be really repetitive, but um, I think if you do what you say you're going to do, especially when you're dealing with difficult items, things that are a little bit out, it's not the vanilla 6063 new production extrusion. You've got something that's a little bit different. It might be 3% contaminant, 5%. You probably say 3 and hope they don't claim you 5, but I mean, sometimes you take a little bit of a chance. But you might want to say, hey, it's 5%, even though you think it's 4, because you don't want to claim, you don't want an issue, and you value this relationship. So do what you think is right. um, Treat people like you'd want to be treated on performance, but the relationship is super important. I think if you take the time to develop a relationship, you will get preferential treatment. uh, I have examples where, hey, we're not in the market, we're just not buying, and you're like, well, it's only 2 loads, can you help me out? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll help you out. They'll give you a fair price because you have a fair relationship. But sometimes it's not just the price, it's being able to move the item. And but yeah, I think volume typically drives the best preferential pricing, but I do think that relationships can as well.
Michael Pavlovsky spoke about exactly that. It's not always about the special price, but it's having a home for your metal. Um, that's often really difficult. And when the markets aren't there, if you're a preferred supplier, often you'll be able to find a home for your material. And there's massive value to that, right? Definitely.
There is. I mean, financing inventory is, and depending on the size of your facility too, something might just be in the way, and it just gets worse and worse because you start putting stuff around it. Or, you know, if it's worth $3 or $4 a pound, or I don't know if the audience is more in metric ton, but so
But mixed. It's
if it's
mixed. So just go with pound for now.
$7,000, 7,000 a metric ton, it costs a lot of money to keep it there. So it's great when you can
Yeah.
move it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of companies I'd say the majority of companies have to move it, right, in order to be able to carry on
Cash flow.
buying.
Yeah.
Cash flow is absolutely key. And no buyer, when there's no market, is going to say, okay, well, I'll finance that while it's sitting on your floor. So
Mm.
Yeah, finding a home for your metal is important. Seb, talk to me about how the industry has changed in the time since you joined. You've been in the industry for over 20 years.
20
How's it
years.
changed, and how do you think it's going to change in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, well, I think there's going to be a much broader attention to sustainability. We are certainly seeing it at Wieland. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about before Wieland, but you know, our customers and even our suppliers, there's a lot of conversations about sustainability, and I think it'll be a lot more important for people to be cognizant of that. Whether you're a recycler trying to get into a good consumer, they're going to want to know more about your business. What are you doing to help the environment? Are you part of any programs? And I feel like there might be even new, you know, classifications that will come along the way. But I think, electrification, EV is going to drastically affect our industry. There's things that we won't see anymore, things we'll see more of that we're not familiar with. But I guess the only other thing I would add is, uh, onshoring, as we're saying. I guess as I grew up in the industry, it seemed like the EU is growing and becoming a bigger happy family, and you know borders are opening, you know uh, trade war limitations and duties is the word I was looking for. Now it seems like we're going the other way, and I feel like nationalistic protectionism of commodities and critical minerals. And so I feel like 10 years from now, it'll be a different landscape because a lot of the, advanced countries are going to want to keep these metals domestically for all the reasons, whether it's national defense or just
Mm.
the fact that it's getting harder and there's less material to mine. So yeah, that'll be an interesting development to watch.
Yeah, I think they're both. They're going to be some huge changes on both those, on the sustainability side as well as the protectionism side from the countries, from regions. I think in particular.
Mm.
So there's a lot to watch. And it's going to be about staying on top of it all. The guys that can, we spoke earlier, pivot. The guys that are flexible and can manage the change are going to be the ones that are successful.
I agree. Yeah.
Talking about that, who are the companies or people that you watching in the industry that are pushing the boundaries?
I mean, I don't know if I can think of any names because, there's been a lot of consolidation. There are obviously some companies that are doing a lot of M&A. There, Rio Tinto and Metalco. I don't know if you heard about that one, but, Metalco is a huge secondary aluminum billet and slab producer, uh, owned by a group that owns a big Canadian company, recycling company. And Rio Tinto came in and bought 50% of that. I think it was around 700 million. These are the examples of you know vertical integration, and the mining companies and the steel mills and the producers. Even Wieland bought a recycling company in the U.S. just over a year ago, which was a huge step for us to get into recycling. And now we're building a recycling secondary copper smelter in the U.S. I think we're going to see a lot more of this happening. But the ones that I'm the most intrigued about are EV battery recycling and the e-waste side of things. I mean, this is just growing at a rapid pace. I mean, the batteries are going to accelerate because it's not that much end of life now. But black mass, which sounds like something out of a Star Trek episode or whatever. It's okay. How do we recycle it? There's only a few that can do it right now, and how is that going to evolve, and who's going to do it? It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to watch in those two industries, right? The e-waste and batteries. Um, a lot of good players, a lot of innovation happening. And with us, we're so aligned to those two industries that I think you'll find a lot of metal recyclers playing in those spaces and keeping a very close eye. So, yeah, I'm also watching them quite closely. Now, Seb, we're running out of time, and we always end with a little bit of getting to know you, right? So let's get to know you a little bit better. Do you have a favorite TV series or movie?
Uh, TV series was probably Star Trek. I watched a lot of that. I think favorite movie was probably something like Armageddon or Independence Day. Like those
Nice.
dramatic
End of the
events.
world, let's save the
Yeah,
day kind of things.
yeah. How is a happy ending?
And what's your favorite place to visit? You spoke earlier, you've traveled a lot, spend some time with the family as well, traveling. Where's your favorite place to visit?
New Zealand, of course.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, it is at the top
it
of my
is.
list. I really loved, I mean, it's so beautiful, and the food and the wine. I have to say, easy is probably Europe, just because it's so easy to move from one culture to another, and being a foodie is one of my favorite things. Is
Mm.
experiencing the culinary offerings of each country, and just seeing the beautiful sights. There's so much history there. So I mean, there's so many places that are worth visiting. I think for convenience and ease, Europe is probably a go-to.
Yeah, if you're a foodie, I mean, it makes sense that you can travel through Europe and in such a small area, just get to taste all the different kinds of cuisine. That's awesome. I plan to one day do a trip in America and try and get to a lot of different smoking, Texas barbecue, meat smoking joints,
Yeah,
but to do like a week long road trip and to just hit a whole lot of them. So I'm a big fan of barbecue.
might have the meat sweats on the flight home, but it'll be
Okay, it'll be
fun.
worth it.
It'll be fun.
It'll be
It'll be
worth it,
worth
mate.
it.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
do you read a lot? Do you have a favorite book?
I don't. I keep saying to myself I should take the time, but it's just tough with the kids and the life and everything.
Sure.
But I really liked Blink. I thought, Malcolm Gladwell. He's written, I think a
Mm.
handful of books, and I've read a bunch of them. But I just feel like, the world is about people, right? And it's how you position yourself, and how respectful you can be, empathetic, and I just think it's a good way to open up your mind on those things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I need to read it. Sounds good.
How you doing?
What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote: "There's no future in the past," for sure.
There's
I
no
think
future in the past.
you always have to look ahead, and
I think
you
it's
can't
brilliant.
change it. You can't. Regret will only
Mm.
make things worse. So you take the lesson and you use it forward.
I love that because so much that I speak about with my kids and family and at work and whatever else is about putting things in the rearview mirror and moving forward. Right. So
Yeah,
when you're driving, right, stick it in the rearview mirror. It's gone behind you. There's nothing you can do about it, and keep that car moving forward.
that's it. Focus on the
Yeah.
next thing.
Yeah. Seb, that's been awesome, man. So great way to finish. Great stories. Really enjoyed having you on the show. And we had been speaking about it for a while, so I'm glad we got it done. Looking forward to meeting up with you in the next few association meetings, whether it's BAR or MRAI, wherever it might be. So thanks for being on Born Scrappy.
You got it. Thanks for considering me, and I appreciated the experience. Take care.
Awesome, Seb. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye. See ya.